The social disconnect between the younger generation and the older generation is deafening, to put it lightly, with the boomers claiming that their offsprings feel entitled to live the lackluster lives that they live, while Gen Z millennials are waiting for their elders to leave the workforce and open up those worthwhile positions that still don't really seem to be all that worthwhile anymore. Well, despite which category or generation you personally find yourself falling into, if you personally relate to anything discussed in this video or simply just been enjoying my daily dreaming commentaries over here on the page, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, opinions down below, and subscribe to see my daily videos right here on the channel. And a huge shout out to him for you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me and the content around here. Now, let's begin this shit show.
Boomers don't want to die, and they don't want to sell their homes. Boomers used to sell their homes, go to Florida, get a condo. Boomers don't want to do that. They're actually retiring, in some cases, bigger homes. It's kind of hilarious and somewhat satanic. Everything's material. So this big house that they lord around. I mean, some of my friends' parents, I'm writing a book about them. They're hilarious. They know nothing. I mean, nothing. But they lord around these big suburban castles, and their whole sense of self-worth comes from this. It comes from materialism. So the idea that they would leave this big house, which is every argument that a boomer ever tries to win, they just point at their house. They have zero idea. They've read no books about anything. They're less really truly funny generation, I think, because everyone has becoming flattened, but they are just very funny and deeply selfish. I mean, it's funny, but they're never going to get rid of these houses. So their kids are kind of, they're being held hostage. I mean, the whole economy, Pelosi, Biden, these very old people, Mitch McConnell, they won't retire. None of them have any plans on retiring. They want to die in office. Nobody will sell their house. Nobody will step down at their job. It's just a generation of people that don't want to stop.
Now, a lot of the older generation looks at the younger generation. They wonder why they despise working so much. And I don't think it's really because a lot of them have a huge lazy mentality. I don't think it's because they genuinely hate the aspect or the idea of working. I think it's just they don't really see that the work they put in really has any real benefit or benefactor or contribution or contribution, whatever that word, to the society or their community at whole, or even at all, really. I mean, just sitting behind a cashier, ringing up overpriced items and then asking people to donate to a cause that's already been paid for just so the companies could write it off in their taxes, is that really helping out the community? And then, if you've ever actually worked at any big corporations, shout out Target, they actually do push every single cashier to sell their red cards. So if you actually do shop at these places, they'll try to convince you, if you're not trying to get into debt, if you're not trying to owe us, you're not really part of the club. Oh, you don't have a red card when you shop here? Fucking bum. That's kind of how it feels when, you swipe your normal Wells Fargo debit like I was doing, even working at the establishment. And it's like, even when I worked there, I was like, I'm not getting into that. I understand, well, there's deals. How do you think they're able to give these deals? Because they made money on all the other people who didn't pay off their debts or who have ran up the credit and end up running up the interest, or however it goes. I don't really know how all the red card works. I don't really do a lot of these credit cards, but I still constantly get them shipped through the mail, get emails about them. Hell, even Wells Fargo is always trying to up my limit so I can, take out more. So it's like America's necessity. It's the West's culture where the more debt they can get you in, the more trapped they can make you feel, the more, they own you. And it's not necessarily like it's a bad thing, because some people use these debts to get ahead. But for the majority of people, guys, it keeps you behind, because if you can't really pay off what you're already living, how do you expect to pay off the debt plus interest? It makes no sense, really doesn't.
The fact is that baby boomers could go to college and get a summer job and pay for their college, okay? And then they didn't go to college, they could go to high school and then go wait online and get a job where you could support a wife and kids off of that job. And that was the way of the world previously, that my grandfather worked in factories his whole life and his wife didn't work. And that was that. And he owned a house, he sent kids to college, he had 2 cars, like they had a nice life. And these kids today come out with 6 figures of debt and are getting a job at, Starbucks, and houses are going for like 600 grand for, for that same humble house that my grandfather had. The baby boomers all got rich by the value of their house just going up.
Agree more.
And it seems like not a one of them ever went, hey, but aren't we kind of like pulling up the ladder on the helicopter here? Like, if my house is like skyrocketing in value, that's nice for me. I got a HELOC and I got like some money coming in now that I can invest in the market that's going up and make this income coming in. But what about the next generation? How are they ever going to buy a house?
They don't care.
And like no one seemed to care about that.
They don't care.
I've been seeing some of you guys in the comments discuss the home situation right now, is that, you know, Gen Zs, millennials, most Gen Zs don't really ever see themselves being able to own a home, at least not in most of the neighborhoods or the communities that they grew up themselves. And a lot of these homes, even in my area where I grew up in, more of a city, suburbia type of atmosphere, it's all owned by older folks. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it really does go to show where just like the workforce, just like, you know, the government, just like the housing market, everything is owned by the majority of older folks. Now, eventually, yeah, they might pass it on, but then it's just going to be inherited by their kids, and it'll just keep on going up in value. So it's really hard to say if you'll ever be able to own any sort of foundation, and it's really holding people back in terms of like looking forward to anything. Because like, what are you really working hard towards? I mean, yeah, you get to retire, but you're never going to own anything. So what are you really going to retire into? Are you going to retire into the nursing home? Hell, hopefully you got good Social Security or good insurance, because we might not be able to afford the local nursing home anymore.
Let me get this straight. You think here in America, we just toss our elderly into nursing homes, but in other cultures, they care for their aging parents. This comment says to me, you've never had to care for an elderly parent here in the US, but I have, so let me educate you. My mother died in 2020 of a particularly nasty and aggressive form of cancer, and on her deathbed, she asked me to care for my father. At the time, he was legally blind, and he lived in his own home 1 block away from us. I honored my promise to my mother. I cooked all of my dad's meals. I did his yard work. My eldest daughter and I did his cleaning, his laundry, his ironing. I paid his bills. I drove him to appointments. Keep in mind, I was raising my own 4 children and trying to run my own business. I put my whole life on hold to take care of my dad. A few months after my mother's passing, he had a stroke. He then had brain surgery, and then later on was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. After a number of falls in his own home, I realized he was no longer safe to use the stairs. We moved him into an independent living facility that had an elevator. My house is very small with 6 people in it, and there was no way for me to move my father in with us. And even if we had, my house was not safe. It also has stairs. It also had a bathtub he could not safely step over to get into. You may not be aware, but independent living facilities are basically just apartment complexes. They're not care facilities, they're not medical facilities. And so when a resident there falls or has care needs, none of the staff can tend to those. As my dad became more frail and unstable as his dementia progressed, he fell more and more. I was called at all hours of the day to the facility to help pick him up off the ground. Keep in mind, these are falls where he is uninjured. I continued to drive him to all of his appointments, pay all of his bills, manage his home, which was now unoccupied. I still did all of the yard work for it. We visited him several times a week. We brought our little dog, Martha, to visit him and the other residents. As my dad's condition progressed, he ended up needing to go to assisted living and then a memory care facility. My dad was a tall man. He needed assistance from 2 aides to get on and off the toilet, showering, dressing, transferring from bed to his wheelchair to his recliner. He had complex medical needs. He needed a much higher level of care than I, his daughter, could give him. And let's be clear here, that is who the caregiving falls to.
It's always been this joke that when your parents get old enough that you have to take care of them, instead of dealing with that, you actually just throw them into a nursing home. At least it's been a joke here in the West. And, you know, I don't think that's necessarily as common anymore, although my grandma was in a nursing home because she needed some help from day to day. And it actually wasn't that bad. It was more of like a community complex, just where it was all like, it was like a 65-plus building, which seems to be more reduced cost. If you actually look in a lot of cities, the 65-plus buildings are reduced cost living situations, so it kind of works out for their Social Security or Medicaid or whatever the fuck they're making. I don't know. A lot of them don't work. So it's really just a crazy situation when it's like, when you get up to these ages, and if you don't have children, which many people now aren't having kids, they can't afford, or they just refuse to because, you know, they can barely even afford to survive ourselves. Who's going to take care of us when we get older? It's a scary situation, guys. So what do you personally feel like your situation is? Do you feel like you have that all figured out? Are you just you don't plan to live that long? Or do you just not even really see yourself in old age? I mean, with the medical field only getting better, the odds of you living longer is kind of high. Wherever you're currently watching this from, whether you're living in the back of your Honda Civic, whether you're currently, you know, at the end of your life, if you're sitting on your deathbed watching this from the nursing home, from the community computer, or wherever you're from, or however old you are. Feel free to leave your thoughts, opinions down below in the comments. I always love to read through those. And if you relate to anything discussed in this video, if you're scared of getting older, if you're feeling aging creeping up upon you, or if you just couldn't really care less because the world sucks overall as a whole, so why even worried about stuff you can't control, feel free to leave those thoughts, opinions down below in the comments. I always love to read through those, sort through those, and respond to the ones I see fit. As well as a huge shout out to the handful of you guys coming through these videos every day, supporting the channel. I'm trying to be as consistent as I can with quality uploads, quality conversations, and different type of topics. So feel free to leave any other topics you'd like to hear me cover in the near future down below in the comments as well as a huge shout out. And I want to give a lot of acknowledgement to the handful of you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me and the content around here genuinely, and it really does inspire me to remain as consistent as I've been. So God bless. Hope you guys have been enjoying. It's kind of all I got for this one, so see you next one. Bye.